Benvenuti a questa edizione speciale di Lucca Comics and Games che nel 2020 si chiama eccezionalmente Lucca Changes, perché è un anno di grandi cambiamenti ed è sicuramente un anno non facile. Ma noi cerchiamo di portarvi una bella occasione oggi con Cassandra Clare, che è qui per salutarvi e per chiacchierare dei suoi libri, dell'ultimo libro in arrivo per Mondadori proprio in questi giorni, della scrittura, delle cose che la appassionano, del mondo degli Shadowhunters, e avremo modo di condividere un po' di cose con lei. La chiacchierata sarà in inglese, ma troverete i sottotitoli. E buon divertimento. Cassandra, thank you for being here with us.
Grazie. Thank you for having me.
We're sorry you can't be in person. That's the only thing we like to do.
Lucca is one of my favorite places in Italy. It's so beautiful, and I wish I could be there.
Oh, well, we'd love to have you. We really would. We hope to do it in the future. Maybe we'll have the chance.
That would be very nice.
So, not to waste any time, let's start with Il Libro Bianco Perduto,
Okay.
the last book of the White. How would you describe it? What can you tell us about it without giving away too much to your Italian readers?
Well, it is a companion book to the Red Scrolls of Magic, and it follows the adventures of two of the most beloved characters from the Shadowhunters world, Magnus and Alec. And in the second book, an old friend who they have thought was dead returns and steals a book from Magnus, the lost book of the White. Well, it's called the Book of the White. In this book, it gets lost. So it's a very dangerous book with magical spells in it that could destroy the world. So Magnus has been guarding it safely. And now, this person has come, taken the book, disappeared, and he and Alec must go on a quest to find the book and bring it back safely before the world is destroyed.
Okay, so it's quite packed with action, I'd say. When do we meet Alec and Magnus again in this book and in the Eldest Curses as well? Because this is the second book of the new trilogies, you said. So there's been already a lot of water under the bridge for them in their story.
Yes, that's true. I mean, Magnus and Alec have had a lot of history in the books, and the first time we ever met them was in the first book of the Shadowhunters world, which is City of Bones. And then Magnus is in every one of the books, and sometimes with Alec. And over the course of the books, it's really charted their relationship from first meeting each other to dating to falling in love. And now in this book, in Lost Book of the White, they have a family. They have adopted a baby. And so one of the really issues for them in this book is, how do we go and, get the Lost Book of the White and save the universe, but also take care of this baby? So it's a new challenge because they've never had to deal with that before.
Yeah, it's unclear which one of the two efforts is the most difficult possible.
Yeah, I think that is true. It's certainly, their first thought is, oh, we must, immediately run and fight these demons. And then they think, oh my God, what about the baby? So of course they have to take the baby to Alec's mother to, this is very normal. The grandparents always end up watching the baby. So she's watching the baby, but the baby is a warlock, so it's able to cast magic spells. So poor Maris, Alec's mother, is chasing this baby around while it floats up to the ceiling and sets the curtains on fire. So she's having an adventure too.
Okay, wow. Well, as you mentioned, we've met Alec and Magnus in the first book, in Città di Ossa, in City of Bones. And I wanted to ask you about Alec in particular, because I wonder if it was relevant at all, or a choice you had to, well, I wouldn't say struggle with, but at least a choice you were conscious of when you decided to make him a gay character.
It was a conscious choice. I wanted there to be a character in the books that my readers who were gay could relate to, someone that they could see their own experience in that character. I didn't want to say, you know, this magic world that's full of wonderful things and, you know, dangerous spells and vampires and werewolves is only for people who are straight.
Yeah, you're right. One thing that I like about the universe is at the beginning in particular, there's magic, but it's not perfect. You know, it's not a perfect universe. It's not ideal in a way. And one aspect of that is the way the Clave reacts when, you know, Alec decides to embrace his sexuality. So again, this, as you said, have you had feedbacks from fans about their experiences reading this book and seeing some of themselves, I suppose, in the characters, Alec as well as others?
Oh, yes. I mean, you know, as the books have gone on, there have been many different kinds of characters. So, you know, I've tried to create a universe where many people can see reflections of themselves. So I've certainly heard from fans, you know, that they're happy to see characters who are like them, you know, that the cast is diverse in race and in ethnicity and in neuroatypicality and typicality, and some, you know, characters are disabled, there are transgender characters, there are lesbian, gay, and bisexual characters. So I've definitely received a lot of very positive feedback from fans who feel, you know, that these characters allow them to feel that they're welcome in the world of Shadowhunters.
Do you think that's one of the reasons, this ability to, you know, to embrace the characters and to relate to them? Do you think it's one of the reasons why so many fans have engaged so thoroughly with their books? You know, there are fan arts and fan fictions and cosplayers and people making fun movies and so on, and I suppose coming up to you to tell them, you know, that's part of their creative process. Is that I wouldn't say daunting, but let's go with that. You know, is that emotional for you at all?
It's very emotional. You know, I've held people and while they cried, you know, because they were, something about the books was, you know, very important emotionally to them. And that's always a feeling of great responsibility. I think that when people tell you that they appreciate something about your book or that your book has moved them, people often think, oh, your reaction must be that you're, you know, feel very proud of yourself. But actually what you feel is that you feel very responsible. You feel that you owe it to people to do good work and to make them, you know, feel happy and included, to do your best, you know. So I do feel a sense of responsibility when I'm writing, you know, not to harm anyone, not to hurt anyone, to try to make people feel welcome, to try to present, you know, stories that reflect my values.
Thank you for that. Sorry. So the universe is Shadowhunters universe. We don't know how to call it otherwise. It's so packed with details and elements who really allow it. How can I say this? It's so packed with elements who really allow readers to believe in it a bit more. It makes it more believable, you know. And I wonder if all those elements who may not be so linked to plot, you know, plot-wise, so to the story. I'm not talking about the runes, for example, but to the family heirlooms, like the family rings, just to say one thing, or the details about what to wear when you get married in the Clave world, you know, as opposed to in the fairies world. So moving from one culture to the next, to another, you find details, the kind of details that you find in real life, in real world. So my question is actually two questions. The first one is, does that help to make it more believable and consistent? And sorry again, how difficult is it to keep track of everything?
To answer your first question, I think that it does help to feel more believable what you look for in an imaginary world, I think, are two things. The consistency of the world, that, we know things about the world that are always going to be true, and that they form part of the backbone of that world. At Hogwarts, the Gryffindors will always be brave and the Slytherins will always be selfish, right? So it's a rule, we know it. And it creates, a structure by which your world exists. And so the reader, as they go along, as we do in real life, we know what to anticipate, and what rules cannot be broken, and then what rules can be broken. And I think that helps with a sense that this world is a real place, because that is in fact how reality works. And you want to, when you're asking your readers to believe in demons and vampires and angels, it's good to give them, a sense that all of this is built on a real foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to the second bit, it is hard to keep track of. I have an assistant who helps me keep track of things. I also have a big book of all the information in the Shadowhunters world. So all the weapons, the history, the magic, the families, right? So, their rings, their famous heirlooms, their family trees.
There's
it's a lot to remember about each family, but we do have to consult it often, and who is running what institute, who is all of that stuff. So it's definitely you can't keep it all in your head. You have to write it down.
Of course, but to broaden that a little bit, so you decide to write this story in particular, let's talk Shadowhunters, and you want to make it consistent. How do you come at it? It's important not to break your own rules. Have you ever broken your own rules when it comes to making it, believable and coherent universe? Anything you'd like to share on that?
Anything like what? Sorry?
You like to share on the writing process behind it, I would say. Behind coming up with such a wide range of phrases and history, so fulfilling, so deep too.
Well, it's fortunate I enjoy doing it, so it's not, it's fun for me. But I think that part of it was that when I first came up with Shadowhunters, I was a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the television show. But I always was worried because, you see, Buffy lived in California, and there was only one Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but there were clearly vampires all over the world. And so I couldn't figure out who was dealing with the vampires, in Russia, in China, in Italy, in France, in Brazil, like who's taking care of the vampires when Buffy is always only in one place. So I'm probably the only person that ever thought about that, but it really bothered me. So when I created the Shadowhunters, I wanted to create them as a global organization. So the Shadowhunters exist all over the world, and there are Shadowhunters we've now visited the institutes in Shanghai, in London, in Paris, in New York, in Los Angeles, and in the Eldest Curses, we visit the institute in Rome. So I think that, because they are a global organization, it actually helps to create for them a more layered history.
Oh, that's intriguing. So you mentioned Rome. Any idea of using Italy as the set, full-fledged book set in Italy from beginning to end?
So far, we've visited Italy a few times in the Shadowhunter Chronicles. We've been to Venezia. We've been to we've been to Venice twice, once in the Eldest Curses and once in the Mortal Instruments. And then we spend time in Rome in the Red Scrolls of Magic. And I would love to set a book in Italy. There's actually, right now, I told my fans that in the second book in the last hour, so there's Catena d'Oro, and then there's Chain of Iron, which I don't know how to say in Italian. Iron.
Catena di Ferro.
Catena di Ferro. Yeah. So in Catena di Ferro, there is an Italian character, and I have not said anything else about her, but the Italian fans have hundreds of theories. What's she going to be like? What's she going to do? Is she going to have a romance? They really want to know. They're very excited. So I think.
I see. So you mentioned the Chain of Iron and Chain of God. Can you tell us anything more about these two books? Are they the first and second part of a trilogy? Is there anything you'd like to add besides the Italian character?
The Catene d'Oro is the first book in a trilogy called The Last Hours. It's set in London in 1903. So it goes back into the history of the Shadowhunters. And we get to see what the Shadowhunters were like, 100 years ago. How was it different to be a Shadowhunter? What was it like to hunt, demons at, that time? And we meet a new cast of characters. It's mostly centers around a girl named Cordelia Carstairs. So if you are a person who has followed the Shadowhunter Chronicles, you know that Carstairs is a very important last name.
Of course.
She's part of this family. And so she comes to London because her mother wants her to get married. But instead of getting married, she encounters, of course, a raft of very dangerous demons who can appear during daylight, and she has to battle them. So it's a fun story. Really enjoying writing it. I love doing the research, and I had a lot of fun with the second book as well, and Filomena, the Italian character. But I can't say anything else about her.
Well, if you decide to change your mind, we do have a few minutes left. Just in case.
Oh no, I'm keeping what she does a secret. It's a big spoiler.
I tried. You mentioned research. How important is it to do research, and how much of that comes from the places you've been? Because I remember from past interviews you've been to London, you love the place. So do I, by the way. It's one of the cities where I think you look around and you have the feeling that something slightly different than everyday's life can happen in a way. Yes. So being in places, setting books in places you have been is something that you have to do. You feel like that's important when it comes to writing?
I think research is extremely important, because you're asking your readers to suspend disbelief, believe in, magic and angels and demons. You want to, like I said earlier, you want to give them a foundation. And that foundation means to me that the world, the research, the history has to be very accurate, because if they don't believe in that, then they won't believe in anything of the rest of it. So I do a lot of research for the historical novels. I read firsthand accounts, people who lived in that time period, traveled to those places, read guidebooks and, maps of London and diaries of people who lived there and histories of the city. And I really do think that, for me, it's really important. I usually, I haven't been able to do it this year because of COVID, but I did last year. Usually I will come to London and spend at least like a month there, walk around the streets, take pictures, and kind of determine, where the major things in the book are going to happen. There's a battle scene in Chain of Iron, and I was in London in January of this year, just before everything shut down, and I brought my mother with me because she wanted to come to London. So I brought her with me. So it's me and my mother, who is 75 years old, my husband, a friend of mine who lives in London and doesn't know anything about these books. And I took them all to the location of a battle scene in the book, and we acted it out. And everybody looking at us like,
as with family, why not?
My poor mother. Everyone's looking at us like, what are they doing? Because we're like fake, okay, I have this sword. All right, I'm over here. I'm casting a magic spell.
Of course. So you could see it with your mind eye. Good.
It actually really helpful, but it was, I think, very embarrassing for my family.
Okay. And entertaining for the tourists as well.
Oh, yeah.
But, okay, it's such an interesting. I love the series, and one of the things that I like is there are many reasons that people like them. Younger audience, older audience. They are YA books, but you have readers of all ages. I think I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, and for many different reasons. And one other thing that I found interesting is that there are so many elements who are linked, at least, or tie back to real life, everyday's life, such as the relations between downwarders and the clave. This constant struggle that goes through times of peace and times of war. And again, I don't want to say too much because not all your readers have read the books, of course, yet. But this constant struggle between trying to find common ground and a common language and the conservative forces who would be very happy to keep each and everyone in their own places. Speak to me so clearly in this day and age, now more than ever. Was that a conscious choice? To
some extent, yes. When I wrote the Dark Artifices, it was very much a conscious, I think, reaction to the Trump presidency in the U.S. and all of the talk that was being had about the treatment of immigrants and migrants, people seeking asylum, terrible things that were happening at our border, the sort of this rise of a kind of nationalist, me first attitude of not, a lack of empathy for other people. I think I think I wound up by writing a trilogy in which the clave itself is split between these forces that are very much pushing for a more insular clave and a rejection of everyone who is not a Shadowhunter, and the opposing forces, our heroes who are pushing for more of an inclusive society. So I think that very much, was a reflection of where our world was at politically, or at least my country was at politically. And we do see this, all over the world. We've seen, the rise of nationalist and populist leaders like Bolsonaro in Brazil, Duterte, Putin. So I think it's something that a lot of people are thinking about and can relate to. But I think that also one of the things that is wonderful about fantasy is that it allows you to address these issues without, you're not tackling the issue itself. I'm not writing a book about Trump. I'm writing a book about the forces that I believe that he represents and the ways in which they apply to everyone.
Absolutely, I agree. A favorite writer of mine, Ursula K. Le Guin. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to misquote her, but she said...
Le Guin, I know who you mean.
Yeah, I think not long before dying, she said something about don't look down on the fantasy writers, because we need writers of a wider reality. It's just a matter of perspective. What matters is how you write and what you write, not just.
She is one of my most admired. I admire her very much, and she once wrote a story called "The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas," which is about a society that is very happy but is only happy because they survive on the misery of one person. So, yeah, it's a wonderful story. And so it is what I think of as a very good example of the way that fantasy can address, in an allegorical way, what it means to have, an upper group in society who is comfortable only because other people are uncomfortable.
Thank you. That's food for thought. You just, I don't know if you just finished, but at least you have finished your first adult fantasy, if I'm not mistaken, adult book.
I'm still editing it.
Okay, almost there. Swordcatcher, is that right? Okay.
Swordcatcher, yeah.
Was it difficult to switch from YA, from the Shadowhunters world to this story? And can you tell us anything about it?
It's very different. So it was definitely a challenge to switch over. It's a story that takes place in a magical world. It takes place in a city called Castellane. And it deals with a boy named Cal, who is his job is as the I'm trying to think of what a word for it would be. He basically takes the place of the crown prince of the city at public events and things like that, in order that if someone tries to assassinate the prince, he will die instead. And he is called the sword catcher because it is his job to catch the swords that are directed at the prince. And the prince, he has grown up with him, learned to act like him and look like him and be like him so that people will be fooled. He's his best friend. They're very, and they have this very close relationship. And over the course of the book, though, of course, it becomes more complicated. He starts to realize things about the crown prince that make him think that maybe he shouldn't be king someday. But what is, he a lowly sword catcher? What is, how can he change the course of history? And it's been really fun because Castellane is such a different setting than anything I've done before. It's this sort of, it's a city that is a melting pot. It's based on, and here we can talk about research, sort of the history of the Silk Roads and trade, and a little bit on the history of Venice, because it's a place where they don't grow anything. They don't have any natural resources. So what they do is trade. They have maritime, they have boats that go out over the sea to trade. They have roads that cut through the continent to trade different goods. And the people who rule the city are the people who are the traders and the merchants. And so it also means that people from all over the world live in Castellane. So Castellane has pockets of different cultures and people from, the whole continent, bringing what to me is sort of an unusual blend of multi-cultures to what would otherwise be a more straightforward fantasy setting. So it's been a lot of fun to write. I really enjoy it. It's definitely a challenge, and it's interesting because people say, is it hard to write for adults? And I don't really think about it that way. I just think I want to write a really good story that will be engaging. But it is true that when you choose to write about people who are older, so these characters are in their 20s instead of in their teens, they just have a different, they have different concerns. They have different things that they care about. These are people who have jobs and sometimes their, own families, and they may be parents, and they may be princes and kings, and they're in charge of things, which is very different, I think, from being a teenager, where there's always a question of what is your freedom, what is your agency, and so I think that is, teenagers are deciding who they want to be, whereas these people already have made those decisions and are living with them.
And now that you are exploring this world, does that mean that you're leaving the YA books behind you? Or?
No, never. I love writing YA. I still have one more, believe it or not, Shadowhunters series to go before the series is completed, called The Wicked Powers. So when I'm done with The Last Hours, I will write Wicked Powers. And then after that, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I definitely would not leave YA behind. I really love writing for teenagers.
So do you know how you're going to end the Shadowhunters series, or not really?
I do.
Yeah. You do? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not allowed to say.
You have, the Shadowhunters series has been brought to the cinema. It's been made into a movie, and has been brought to TV series. Would you like to see it adapted again? And if so, is there any change you would make in your being involved in an adaptation as opposed to not being directly involved in it?
I would like to be involved. I would love if they did another adaptation. I would like if they adapted the Infernal Devices, which are the first historical stories that take place in Victorian England, because I love a historical adaptation. I love the clothes. I love the sets. It's all so much fun. So I would love if they adapted the Infernal Devices. And I've been talking to Constantine about who owns the rights about that. But I would also like if they readapted the Mortal Instruments and the whole story, because the TV show, the movie only covered the first book, and the TV show was very dissimilar to the books and didn't cover anything that happened in them. So, there are a lot of scenes in the books that I really love, and I'd love to see them come to life. And I'd like to see someone tell the actual story of the Mortal Instruments. So, I always hope And certainly, I think if if we're able to make like a Infernal Devices or, Dark Artifices or, even the Eldest Curses would be wonderful into a TV project or a movie, then I think it would be more likely that we would be able to go back and do Mortal Instruments again.
Well, of course, I think the series as a whole lends itself very, very easily to TV series because of the format. You can give away, it's the wrong word, sorry, but the entry points into this universe are so many that you could really come at it from different angles.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you could come at it from, like I think you could come at it from the Eldest Curses, you could come at it from Infernal Devices or the Dark Artifices. So really you could, come at it from any direction.
Absolutely. So when it comes to writing, is there any advice you would give or you do give when they come at you to young writers or wannabe writers, kids who like to write?
I try to talk to them a little about what they're working on and what problems they might be having. But in the general scheme of things, my usual advice is that you should read a lot of books, read a lot of books and read books that you would not normally read. Like you may be someone who thinks that you only like mystery books, but yeah. I would say even if if you talk to a successful mystery author, they will tell you that they also read history and they also read, fantasy, and they also read literature because you want to get see as many different kinds of writing and the ways that people tell stories as you possibly can, because you learn, from you learn to write from reading.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you. How important is reading for you? Because during my research for this interview, I came across more than one instance in which you mentioned reading and your favorite writers and a book title you liked. And I think it's so important when that comes across so clearly, how reading is literally the founding stone for so much more, for being a creative person, I would say, and us as well.
I mean, reading.
Reading. Is there anything you like to share about that? How important you find it?
I mean, reading to me is incredibly important. It's something I've actively been doing all my life since I was 4 years old. I was that kid in school who, during lunchtime was sitting in the corner with the book. I mean, I think at some point I too learned, taught myself that I should read books that were not necessarily, the books that I thought I would like. And I learned a lot about a lot of new favorite authors that way. And I think that you also read to keep the voice of imagination alive in your mind. I mean, to me, books are magical because they are one person who has come up with this whole story in their head. And they're telling you this story, and it comes alive. It becomes a piece of living art, and that is kind of incredible.
Thank you.
I recommend it. Read. And one of the things I think that I found out when I was older was that, when I was a kid, or a teenager, I wasn't interested in reading nonfiction. I only wanted to read stories. And I think as I got older, I discovered how fantastic, research books and history books and nonfiction could be.
Thank you. That's an original take for the younger audience. Thanks for that. As we are getting closer to the end of our time together, I'd like to ask you a couple of names of favorite writers you'd like to share with others? Anyone that pops to mind beside Le Guin?
Oh my gosh. Obviously, Tolkien had a huge effect on me as a fantasy writer. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to get my Kindle. This way I can read off from, Jane Austen is one of my favorite writers. Recently, I've been reading Elena Ferrante.
Oh, okay. How do you like it?
I love the relationships between the women in the books. They're so strong, so layered and interesting. So I would definitely I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure everyone in Italy has read Elena Ferrante, but not everyone in the US has yet. So absolutely one of my new discoveries that I love. Ursula Le Guin, absolutely. C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, some other classic children's fiction. Lloyd Alexander wrote a wonderful series of books called the Chronicles of Prydain that I love and recommend. Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite writers. Absolutely love his, oh my gosh, the cemetery book, the graveyard book, that's what it's called. It's wonderful. And he just came out with a new book of collected Norse mythology. That's really amazing. So I love those. To read younger, Rick Riordan is an amazing author, and I love what he does with Norse mythology and Egyptian mythology. They're really fantastic. So that's fun. Let's see. I mean, I could go on forever. So
that's quite a pattern. Thank you. But yes. And then before we close, I'd like just to ask about your relation with your interaction with fans, because I remember reading that you started by writing fan fiction, and there are so many people now, younger, older, not so young, who enjoy the experience of writing it and to read it and to use it, and they do use it to, how can I say this, to attack certain aspect of the original story that they feel hasn't been explored for whatever reason, or they want to tweak it in a way or in the other. And I find that exercise, creative exercise, so intriguing when it comes, and when it does tackle a good story or a good narrative universe. I think it offers a lot. So what's your relationship with that, with fans who enjoy writing and making art based on your stories?
I think it's great. I think it's really fun. I think it's an honor to have people so invested in something you created that they want to create something about it. I support the writing of fan fiction. I love fan art. I always am trying to find new fan art, reblog it. I'm a terrible artist. I can't draw people at all. So it's a great way for me to see, what my fans are envisioning that these people look like, because I can't draw them. So it's a wonderful service. And I like just interacting with fans. I think you can be a fan and you can creatively, contribute to the fan culture, even if you don't draw or write. There's a lot of people who write essays, or they create photo collages, or they do beautiful things with their books. And I think all of it is really, it's wonderful. Like, it creates a community of readers. And I think that's so important, because I believe that reading is a great value. And so one of the things about creating a community of readers is they support each other in reading. And I think that's really lovely.
Support each other in reading is a great claim, I think, for this interview. It's a great sentence. And I support that all completely. Sorry. Do you think that fan writers and fandom in general is in any way changing the relationship between the publishing world or the movie production world, or when it comes to creating new contents? Has it affected at all the way the powers that be behind publishing houses or production companies think about the products?
I mean, honestly, I don't know. I tend to feel that a lot of publishers aren't paying maybe as much attention as they should to fan communities. They tend to just be like, oh, they're doing their own thing over there. And it's kind of funny because, I'm not going to say which publisher, a publisher came to me and said, we've made this video. It's, we're going to use it. It's so amazing. This book video and it's going to be the centerpiece of our marketing campaign. And I was like, but this is actually something that the fans have already done and better. So I'm not sure they're going to be excited about your video because they've already made their own and they're better than this video.
Yeah.
So, I would think they would
know about it. So
them to pay a little more attention to fan culture, maybe. But I think that I don't think it changes the way that I write. I like interacting with fans. But my belief is that, what I owe them is the best work I can do. And so, I have to make that decision about what that's going to be. But I answer questions online. I feel like, I think that I'm not, it's weird because I'm not in fandom. I'm the writer, but I guess I would say that to me, the thing that has most changed fandom is the access to writers. That social media has created an ability for fans to ask writers questions and interact with them in a way that wasn't possible 20 years ago.
True, very much so. And again, it inspires so many people. You mentioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer earlier on, and I remember reading a quote, and I hope it's a true quote by Russell T. Davies, who is the man responsible for bringing back Doctor Who in 2005. You know, the renaissance of Doctor Who is a great series. I like it. I think many people around the world do, even if they're from a different culture. Because it does speak in Italy as much as it does speak to the UK audience, to the British audience, and yet one can wonder why. Maybe because certain themes don't care about borders. But again, Russell T. Davies said that without Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Doctor Who would be different. Because he was inspired. So it's intriguing. As you said at the beginning, we tie back to the beginning now that we are closing this. We don't have any more time together, but the idea of having a responsibility, because if you put out in the world your best possible work, that is going to be fertile for someone else. For someone else's imagination.
There's a good quote from Terry Pratchett that says, there's a pot of creativity.
Yeah.
And everyone puts into the pot and everyone takes out of the pot. And the only crime is pretending that the pot does not exist.
That's a great line to end our interview.
So you had a lot of great lines, but I really love that one. And it's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If you stay with me for a couple of minutes more, we'll just say goodbye to our Italian friends and audience. And we hope to meet them again soon. And I'll be back with you.
Okay. Ciao.
Ciao.